Hi there, and welcome back to another math video with Ms. Rickfelder. We are going to be looking at dividing decimals by whole numbers today, and this falls underneath that 6.ns.2.3 standard. So that's just saying that we're going to learn to fluently add, subtract, multiply, and divide using multi-digit decimals. So it looks like we're almost about finished with this standard, so let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'd like you to do is in your composition notebook, I want you to go ahead and head your paper with divide decimals by whole numbers, and then I'd like you to write the following problem down. It says there are 8.4 meters left on a roll of ribbon. Nancy wants to cut the ribbon in half. What will be the size of each piece of ribbon? So right away, we're going to jump right in using a word problem here. The first thing you want to do whenever you're working with word problems is you want to make sure that you annotate the problem. Remember, we've talked about that in class quite frequently, and to annotate the problem means that you're underlining, boxing, circling, whatever you need to do to really pull out the important information. So as you can see, I've underlined 8.4 meters because that's what we started with. And then I've also underlined the word cut because that tells me the operation that we're going to need to use, and half tells me sort of the other number that we're going to be dividing by. So let's go ahead and see what that's all about. So the 8.4 meters is what we start with, and then we're going to divide because it says you're going to cut it in half, so we're literally physically dividing, and we're going to do it by 2 because if you break something in half, you're breaking it into 2 pieces. So the problem that you have is 8.4 divided by 2. So the first thing that you're going to want to do in every single dividing whole numbers and decimals problem is you're always going to want to bring the decimal up from the dividend to the quotient. So that 8.4 is the dividend, and obviously the quotient is the answer. So your first thing is to place the decimal. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. You can see I placed the blue decimal on top where the quotient will go. The next thing you want to do is divide like you normally would, and you want to pay extra close attention to your placement of the numbers in your quotient. So sometimes with the numbers that are bigger, or perhaps numbers that you would have to place to 0, sometimes you can kind of fudge and have them in the wrong place a little bit and you still get the same answer. But with decimal work, that's not the case. So you want to make sure that you're very careful about that placement. So the first thing we ask ourselves is how many times does 2 go into 8? Well, 2 goes into 8 4 times. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 minus 8 is 0. And then we bring down the 4. Now we see how many times does 2 go into 4? 2 times 2 is 4, 4 minus 4 is 0, and then we have our answer of 4.2 meters. Now make sure, because this is a word problem, that you have written the M here at the end of this so that we know 4.2 what? Are these giraffes, camels, cows, parties? Meters. They're meters. So you want to make sure that you have the units at the end. The next problem, example 2, it says find 6.54 divided by 12. What's unique about this problem is that it's written horizontally. Horizontal means like the horizon, from left to right. So with these problems, it's important that you know how to set them up as a division problem that you can work with, because there's a little flip-flop action that goes on. So when you write that, you want to say to yourself 6.54 divided by, and then you draw the little house over the 6.54, 12. And again, just like before, our first step is going to be to place that decimal right above the decimal in the dividend, which the dividend is our 6.54, and our quotient is going to be just above that. And then we're going to divide like normal. So we see how many times does 12 go into 6? Well, that's 0 times, so we need to put a 0 right there. Then we see how many times does 12 go into 65? Well, 12 times 5 is 60, and we want to go ahead and have 65 minus 60. Now, I know that 12 times 5 is 60 because I'm a math teacher and I know my 12 times tables. But if you don't, off to the side, you want to do 12 times 5, and you want to get the answer 60 so you know exactly where that number came from. So 65 minus 60 leaves me with 5 left over. Then we're going to go ahead and drop the 4, so then we have 54. Then how many times does 12 go into 54? Well, we know that it's not going to be 5 because 5 gave us 60, so it's probably going to be 4, and 4 gives us 48. 12 times 4 is 48, and then we're left with 6. So now, keep in mind, we don't have remainders in 6th grade math. We're not working with remainders, so it's important that you know that you can add a 0 at the end of this number, and you don't have to do anything special because there's already a decimal in your dividend. So remember, we talked about this in class, like 6.54 is the same as 6.540 because that 0 at the end, if you got that for your answer, we would call that, remember, the insignificant 0. So we would drop that. So it's insignificant, and that's why we can add it without having to do anything in our answer because it doesn't change the value of our dividend. So right now, let's go ahead and add a 0. So we don't want any remainders. That's just a little reminder. We're going to add that 0, and then we're going to drop it. So the remainder, since there is already a decimal in your quotient, you can just add a 0. So you want to add this note here with the remainder, and you also want to have the remainder with the big red X on the left-hand side. And then you're just going to go ahead and bring that down. And remember from before, we know that 12 times 5 is 60. So we can finish the problem off, and our final answer is 0.545. And we make sure to put a box around that so that it's easy to see. Be sure that you have written everything down on the screen before you move on to the next example. All right, so here's what we're going to do on this page. Now it's your turn, it says. So we are going to divide and round to the nearest tenth if necessary. So we're going to divide and round to the nearest tenth if necessary. So you want to make sure that as soon as you see those instructions that you go ahead and put a circle around the tenths. I'm going to show you how to do the first problem here. So what I want you, actually I'm not going to show you how to. I want you to go ahead and start by doing the first problem. So you want to pause the video, do 48.33 divided by 3. Then I'll go over that answer. Then right there in your composition book, after we're done with that, I'm going to have you do these last problems. So let's go ahead and pause your video now. And then I want you to try 48.33 divided by 3. All right, great. Welcome back. Hopefully you didn't have any problems with 48.33 divided by 3. Let's go ahead and take a look. So 48.33 divided by 3, the first thing you want to do is place that decimal. So we've done that here. Then we say, how many times does 3 go into 4? Well, that's 1 time. 4 minus 3 is 1, drop the 8. Then we know that 3 goes into 18 6 times. Then we're going to have to drop the 3 again. So 3 goes into 3 one time, and 3 goes into 3 again. Whoops, one more time. So now we get our final answer here for this problem of 16.11, but you want to remember, and this is where a lot of people lost credit before, that we're rounding to the nearest tenth. So it's very important that you round to the nearest tenth. So we're going to write our answer, which was 16.11. Then we're going to draw our back door and underline that tenths column. Tenth, T-E-N-T-H. Remember, that's the one that I've underlined here in red. And that one over here next to it in the hundredths place is what tells us that that one with the red underline stays the same. So our final answer here is going to be 16.1. And notice we have dropped that one on the very end. So 16.1 is your final answer here. All right, so we're also going to do this problem here, 145.8 divided by 12. So go ahead and pause your video now, and I want you to go ahead and do that problem on your own as well. All right, great. Welcome back. So hopefully you didn't have any problems with that problem. We're going to place the decimal first, and then we're going to ask ourselves, how many times does 12 go into 14? Well, 12 goes into 14 one time. Now, this is what I meant with that, make sure that you place the numbers in the correct place. That 1 absolutely has to go over the 4, because if it goes over the 1, then you've messed up your decimal placement. So you want to make sure that you're very careful about that. 14 minus 12 is 2. You're going to drop the 5. Then 12 goes into 25 twice, because 12 times 2 is 24. Then you're going to go ahead and drop that 8 after you've subtracted. So 12 goes into 18 one time. Then you have 6 left over. And remember, just like before, you can go ahead and add a 0 with no problems because there's already a decimal there. And remember, 12 goes into 65 times. So your final answer for this problem is going to be, well, not your final answer, sorry, your answer before you rounded it is going to be 12.15. And then you need to underline the tenths column. Don't forget, because our instructions said round to the nearest tenth. So the tenths column here is that 1. Then we're going to draw our back door, and we're going to find out who's knocking on our back door. The 5 is knocking on the back door, so remember that means that the 1 becomes a 2. So your final answer in this problem is 12.2. So hopefully you didn't have any problems here. And what we're going to look at now, hold on one second. All right, so as you can see, it says here that I've asked you to complete the last 4 problems in your composition notebook with the notes. If you need more room to work, please feel free to go to the next page in your composition notebook. Please box and highlight your final answer and show all your work. So the 4 that I have the blue arrows next to are the 4 problems that we did not do in the video. So I should see the 2 that I went over in the video because I've gone over those and you practiced them on your own. But then I should also see these 4 when I come around to check your notes. So right here also I have a little quote, inspirational for us. It says, the secret of getting ahead is getting started. And that was Mark Twain's quote. So good job for getting started and watching your video here, and good luck with the problems. Have a great day. See you next time in class.